what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to say to all y'all is that you can make an impact right now. That's it. There's no but, there's no, there's no, and you have to get blah, blah, blah. My message isn't that you have to fix yourself. You're not broken.
Yeah.
You need to make an impact now. So it's not even like you can make an impact now. It's like we need you right now. So whatever corner of the world you're in, do it.
You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping Black entrepreneurs start, market, and grow their businesses. I'm Monique, and I'm the founder of Black to Business, and today we're switching things up a bit. Since 2017, we focused on highlighting Black men in business who are continuing to push our communities forward. So we decided to dedicate the month of June specifically to celebrating Black men with our special series entitled Black Men Who Lead. We're so lucky to have Aquarius Kelly, educator and founder of A Lover's Ambition Lifestyle Group, step in as our guest host. In 2017, Aquarius actually hosted our very first Men Who Lead panel in partnership with Verizon Wireless. So we're so grateful that he agreed to host this special series. Let's jump into these amazing conversations. Really quick before we hop into the episode, I want to share with you an exciting announcement. So today's episode is sponsored by the launch of our very own business directory called The Connect. The Connect is a directory consisting of vetted Black professional service providers who can assist you with your business needs and also help you take your business to the next level. We have awesome legal, marketing, PR, strategy experts, and so much more. So if you're on the hunt for help finding an expert in your business, check out the directory at blacktobusiness.com/directory. I also want to share with you a little bit about why we created The Connect. Being that Black to Business is a platform that focuses on providing aspiring Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses, we are often asked for recommendations for industry experts who can assist these entrepreneurs with their specific business needs. So we wanted to create a solution, and that's the purpose behind The Connect. I have you know that we are very intentional about all the services that we provide, and we always want to provide value. So we actually vetted these businesses to make sure we can only recommend you the best of the best. So be sure to check it out again at blacktobusiness.com/directory. Now back to the conversation.
Welcome to the Men Who Lead edition of the Black to Business podcast. I'm your guest host, Aquarius Kelly, and our guest is best-selling author, public speaker, and coach, Damon Brown. Today, we will be talking about owning our power and growing our hustle. To kick things off, would you mind telling us about your backstory and how you went about navigating to where you are today?
And thank you for having me, Aquarius. I appreciate it. I'm Damon Brown of DamonBrown.net. My main thing is helping side hustlers, solopreneurs, and other non-traditional entrepreneurs. Non-traditional to me means people who are over-mentored and underfunded, people who represent the so-called other. So people in the LGBTQ community, people of color, the BIPOC, as we talk about nowadays. Anyone who's been underestimated, who might need more support. I definitely fall into that category, so I'm one of y'all. And so my background is journalism, was a full-time freelance journalist, still am, for several years, going on decades now. I have 2 degrees in journalism. That was my background. And then I moved to Silicon Valley because my now wife, then girlfriend, got an opportunity up at Stanford. And so I moved up with her up to Silicon Valley, lived there at the heyday of that, where I was there from 2008 to 11. And if you know your Silicon Valley history, it was like Mark Zuckerberg was just coming up. I was in the same rooms as Steve Jobs, no lie. I was actually there when he died. People that I was cool with or just hung out with, got ramen noodles with, they became billionaires on paper or became millionaires when their companies got acquired in that period of time. It's a crazy time to be there. And after I proposed to my wife, we ended up leaving Silicon Valley because it got way too expensive and we wanted to have a family after we got married. And shortly after that, I became an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur at the exact same time that my wife and I had our first son. And I'm the primary caregiver. And so I became an entrepreneur when my eldest son, Alec, was 3 months old. And ended up being this really intense journey, as you can imagine. We're talking 2014. So 2013, 2014. So you didn't have, like, I write for Inc. magazine, and on Inc. magazine, you didn't have pregnant women on the cover who were founders. You didn't have, you know what I mean? You didn't have, like, dads who were, like, proud to be like, oh yeah, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm a primary caregiver. I'm a person of color, and I'm doing all this stuff. Like, there were no blueprints for me. Yeah. And so my first startup was called So Quotable. It allowed you to capture people's quotes. And I would wake up at 3:15 in the morning, work from 3:15 to 6 a.m. My eldest would wake up like clockwork at 6 a.m. Like he was like an alarm clock. And then I'd spend the day with little man. And that would be like my entire day. So my wife got home. She's a pediatrician. So she'd get home around 5 or 6 after being on call. We'd have dinner together, get the boys, or actually at the time, just boy to sleep. He used to have more than one kid, get the kid to sleep. And then we'd spend a little bit of time together and do the same cycle. And that was the only way that I could be fully present as a dad, which is really important to me, as I've talked about in my books. And then also give my all to the startup. And I'm getting a startup off the ground that following March when my son was about 9 months old. I got the attention of the TED conference. They asked me to do a TED Talk at their second stage up in Vancouver, which was a really big deal, particularly at the time. And I did a talk connected to what I was doing with the app. That got the attention of 2 other folks that were in my network who were working on an idea called Cuddler. And this idea, in the age of Tinder and Grindr, again, this is 2014, was going to connect people for hugs. So like a platonic version of that. Yeah. And I've been a writer for Playboy, a writer for the New York Post. I've written about technology and sexuality and intimacy and all that stuff. So it was like right up my alley, which is why they came to talk to me. I became a co-founder. I essentially was a CMO and the COO, and still same cycle, and released it September of 2014. My son had just turned 1, and we became the number 1 app in several countries within the first week. Had 100,000 completed hugs. 100,000 users, 10,000 completed hugs. And then by the end of that year, we were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, had 250,000 users. And we ended up having the app acquired less than a year later, right after my son's 2nd birthday. And so I give all that detail to say that that's the journey that I've been on. And since I did that, again, I became a columnist for Inc. magazine at IncDamonBrown.com, doing that for like 6 years. I did a book called The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur that became a bestseller. That became a series. I started a coaching practice over at DamonBrown.net. And yeah, I got my new book called Built From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, Nourish the World. And that's my definition of what a bite-sized or non-traditional entrepreneur is. You grind and you build. Well, build from now. You build based on what you have. You don't say, okay, I'm going to wait till the kids grow up. I'm going to wait till I get a bunch of money because I bootstrap both of the companies. I'm going to wait till a VC pays attention to me. Because a lot of the times I've found, I've had the best-selling books. My books that became bestsellers, the publishers didn't believe in them. The bestseller, the books that I sold the most of, I published myself. You know what I mean? Even though I've worked within the traditional publishing industry, the 2 bootstrap companies I did, the first one got the attention of TED, led to my first TED Talk. The second one became one of the most popular apps in 2014 and going into 15 and got acquired. I know a lot of people that got VC backing that haven't seen that. And so really helping people as a coach, as a speaker, to believe in themselves and build based on the resources that they have. Because if we're waiting for somebody else to give us the resources, it's either going to be too late or that time's never going to come.
Yeah, most definitely. And I appreciate you sharing that backstory. And we're definitely going to make time to dig deep into Build From Now. But before we do that, I'm really curious to hear about what inspired you to be a journalist. Like when you were a child growing up, did you want to be a journalist? What was that journey like?
It was really simple. My parents said that I came out with a pencil in one hand and a joystick in the other. So I was always really interested in communicating and telling stories. And I was always interested in technology. And what was the challenging part for me wasn't telling stories. And as you can tell, I like to talk and tell stories, and I like to listen to other people's stories. I like to convey other people's stories, which I think is really important. But I think the tough part was that I was also interested in technology. And that makes perfect sense now. I mean, when I was in grad school, Tumblr was hot. You know what I mean? Like, so people were doing stories all day. LiveJournal was hot, if you remember that. Like, and of course today you have social media. You have something like the story of Zola, which is in the theaters right now. Like, that's completely done in 140 or 280 characters. But at the time, I'm in my 40s, so you go back to the 70s and 80s, that technology and journalism wasn't unified. And so that was kind of the friction that I felt. It wasn't me being a journalist. I always had that support. But me being a journalist and a nerd, like, people didn't get it. And there were really two camps that I would hang out with. It was like the folks who quoted Shakespeare, no lie, and we're reading Chaucer and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway, and I keep going, like those folks. And then there were the folks who were trying to make video games in the lab, and the folks that were trying to make apps before the term app was even invented. And I hung out with both of them, and that ended up being a really big asset now. As far as with journalism, I think my thing has always been, if I have a particular platform or if I have a particular strength, if I have some light shining on me, I want to bring other people on that platform. And there's a much longer history to that, but the short version is that me becoming a coach is reflective of that. Because for me, it's like, okay, I've had best-selling books. I've been on a TED stage now 4 times. All these different experiences that I've had are just beautiful. And it's like, and at the same time, I don't want to be the only one on the stage. So I want to give that game, as I try to do with Build From Now, I want to give that game to the non-traditional entrepreneurs. And at this point, I've coached hundreds of folks and worked with nonprofits and given my time. And for me, that's kind of the point. I think it was it Toni Morrison? I want to say Toni Morrison said that your main job after you get out of wherever you're into and you get your well-paying, well-regarded job is to go back and bring everybody else up.
Yeah.
And I'm screwing up. Like, I love her to death, so she's probably rolling her grave because I screwed up her quote. You should look it up.
You get the message, though.
You get the message. Okay.
You get the message. Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is disrespect her. I quote her a couple of times and Build From Now, so I keep her in high regard. I hate to butcher a quote, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And that's my intention. But that was my intention when I was a full-time journalist, is to talk to people and to tell stories of people and communities that have been overlooked, even though they're a big part of what America is today. I used to be a hip hop journalist, and so I used to write a lot for The Source, XXL, Spin. I think the only one I didn't get in is Rolling Stone. But other than that, like, of the 90s and the aughts, like, I wrote for a lot of them. And that was part of that intention. So when I was talking to Redman or interviewing Lil' Kim or talking to a rapper that was just from the neighborhood, it wasn't just, I love hip hop music. It's like, no, this is like $1 billion, at the time, multi-billion-dollar industry. Now it's trillion. But at the time, it was a multi-billion-dollar industry. These are the people that are feeding our culture. As we used to say, the white kids in the suburbs, they're sagging their pants and they're wearing the Carl Kanai and wearing the Adidas or whatever because of us. And so it was really important for me to trace that lineage. And so me being a journalist isn't that much different than me being a coach, because it's like tracing that lineage and showing that people of color, people in the LGBTQ community, like all of us have contributed to the entrepreneurship and the building of America and beyond at this point. And so it's like, with my coaching and hopefully with my talks, my books, helping people to recognize their greatness. And it's like, no, you're part of this story too. You might not think that. You might not think that you have enough insight, or that, you have enough, you have this VC, saying that they're going to give you money, or, you don't have the press calling you, asking you what you're doing. It's like, just because you don't have that, it doesn't mean that your story isn't valuable. And as a coach and as a speaker, I'm hoping to kind of put the battery in people's back and help them realize their own value,
Yeah, as I'm listening, it takes me back to a saying that I've shared with other people, and maybe it's come from someone else, but it somehow has come to me, and I just continue to share with others, is just because we don't have the job doesn't mean we can't do the work, right? And I know you hint to that a lot. And even with a lot of hip hop references, as I was listening to your audiobook, Jay-Z, Kendrick, Busta, and I'm like, you're connecting a lot of different parts of culture, from Silicon Valley, hip hop, Toni Morrison, tons of quotes from different philosophers. What is your approach to information and research? Like in your day to day, what inspires you to tell yourself, all right, I like this bit. Let me jot this down. Let me put this in a journal. What is your approach to research?
Thank you. And that's a really big question. I appreciate that. I'm a researcher at heart. And again, my first app, So Quotable, it captured quotes. So I'm really big on the quotes.
Yeah.
I'm a traditionally trained journalist twice over. So it's like I'm extra quotes. I've been trained to listen to quotes and to understand the best bites. And of course, being a hip hopper, as we talked about offline, I'm originally from South Jersey. So that energy is kind of, I'm part of that culture, whether I'm a B-boy or not. And so I think it's really about making all things equal. I think that's the intention, where the books that I've written have often been about cultures that have been neglected or people that have been neglected, even though they're extremely influential. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, like, for instance, I have my first major book was called Porn and Pong, How Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider, and Other Sexy Games Changed Our Culture. That came out around the time that my now wife and I moved up to Silicon Valley. It was 2008. That was one of the reasons why, me doing an app connecting people for platonic intimacy made perfect sense, because I had spent 5 years researching this book about technology and intimacy.
Yeah. And
very briefly, on the cover, it's like, okay, Damon's looking at video games and this history over, I was born in the 70s. So video games officially started technically like in a mainstream way in 1972. So a little bit before I was born. So I'm looking over the span of my life, essentially, those 30 years. And it's like, oh, okay, Damon's doing a retrospective of these video games and how there were certain sexy video games that were provocative and this, that, and the third. And he's a writer for Playboy. Okay, fine. People can take it at that face value. And that's cool. A lot of people did. The critics did. Some of the critics did. I got written up in some of the major literary publications. That's the way they took it initially. Cool. But what I was really trying to do, and it took me a couple of years to figure this out after I was writing the book. It took me 5 years to write the book. About 2 years in, I realized what I was really doing.
Yeah.
And what I was really trying to do is say, video games are part of the cultural narrative. They should be studied as much as movies, as much as classic literature, as much as poetry, as much as classical music. But then that's not too different than me realizing or talking about how a certain artist like a Kendrick Lamar, well before the Pulitzer a couple of years ago, that an artist like Kendrick Lamar was just as important as a Shakespeare or a Voltaire or a Chaucer. Like, so that's really the way I approach my research. In one of the first chapters of Build From Now, I think it's the second chapter, I think it's Salmon. It's the name of the chapter. It's not the name of the food, but it's called Salmon. And I talk about Seth Godin, who I've studied under his workshop. He's like a really well-regarded marketing guy.
Yes.
I'm talking about Seth Godin, and then I'll switch over and talk about Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist monk who, unfortunately, I've never met, but I've read her material, and I meditate every day, and I love her words. And so talking about her, and then talking about Dapper Dan, who was the fashion icon back in the early 80s, back when I was a kid, over in, I want to say Harlem.
Yeah, Harlem.
Right, Harlem? Okay, I want to make sure I got it right. I don't want any of the borough folks coming to get me. It's Harlem. So he's representing Harlem, right? Which, of course, makes perfect sense when I say it out loud. And him creating fashion and then getting shut down because he was accused of being a bootlegger, even though he was recreating and what we would call deconstructing that fashion. But to me, like Seth Godin and Pema Chodron and Dapper Dan and Barack Obama and Chris Rock and Kendrick Lamar and Busta Rhymes, they all could be saying the exact same thing. And so that's my kind of intention, again, back with Horn and Pong, but also in some ways, I guess, as you point out with Bill From Now, is that's my approach to research, is to say, I can learn something from 2 Chainz as much as I can learn something from Tony Robbins. What makes one person smarter than the other? And I think when we classify things as street smarts and book smarts and all that stuff, you know, at the end of the day, I think that's BS. I think it's all stuff that we can use. A really good example of this is, and I think that's one of the reasons why it became so popular, would be something like the 48 Laws of Power with Robert Greene. And I got a chance to meet him over the phone probably like a decade and a half ago. I got a chance to interview him. I have the interview in one of my books called The Damon Brown Reader, which collects a lot of my earlier journalism articles. Right. But, you know, a lot of people are familiar with 48 Laws of Power. And people often have said to me it's overhyped. But the brilliance of the 48 Laws of Power is that he grabs from everything. And so as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing that's part of that influence, is to say that all things are equal. And if all things are equal, then the insight that comes from a sister that I might know in the rougher part of South Jersey is equal to, you know, an Ivy League dropout that comes from a trust fund that I met in Silicon Valley a handful of years ago. So kind of leveling the playing ground and realizing that anyone can bring that kind of insight. It doesn't have to be from a particular culture. In fact, if it is from different cultures, that makes things all the richer.
Yeah, and your ability, as well as anyone else's ability to draw these parallels, is I would say, a skill of observation in itself, because you have had the opportunity to occupy these various spaces that other people may or may not have the opportunities to occupy. But not only do you do that, you take from it, you observe, and you're drawing parallels that really help to build new things. When we look at innovation, essentially that's what innovation is, which is what you spoke to, is, okay, I'm going to take a little bit from here, scratch that up, mix that up a little bit. Next thing you know, we have a remix and the crowd is going wild, right? So, I mean, that for me, I look at it as the art of curation as well. I know you said when it comes to storytelling, it's not only about telling our story, but there's so many stories that we can help to curate, and through curation, it's then amplified, right? Through our platform, through other people's platforms. So that's a space that I've always enjoyed playing in, and that's really what excites me. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. I think it gets into my favorite word nowadays is cross-pollination.
Yeah.
Like you think about a bee, and bees don't make honey by just sitting on a flower and then just biding time. They take from one flower and then they fly to another flower, and then that's all they do all summer. And I think it's the same type of energy. But what we don't realize is that we're actually the flowers. We don't realize that we have to put our hat in the ring. We have to, as Brene Brown says, we have to get in the arena. Yeah. Otherwise it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Like, the powers that be, mainstream media, whatever umbrella we might seem to feel like that, whatever umbrellas we feel like aren't recognizing us, aren't giving us a seat at the table, they might not recognize that something's missing. But we recognize something's missing. And we can get agitated about it. We can get frustrated. We can get angry. I think that's where a lot of that frustration comes from, because we feel like we're not having our say. And I'm hoping with my material, whether it's I have my Bring Your Worst show at youtube.com/BrownDamon. I have like 3 shows I run every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I do that. I do the ink column at inkdamonbrown.com. I have my books. I do my keynotes, I do my one-on-one coaching. That's really the simple mission of it, is to say, other people might not see your value, but you can't forget it. Like you have to keep that flame going and find a way to create. And I know you understand this, where there's never been a better time in the history of mankind to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
That's a gift and a curse. I'm not saying it's easy, because everybody and their mother has a book now, but so I've been doing books long enough where like doing a book was like a big deal. Now it's like, oh, okay, I was going to put out a book. So there is way more. It's a way more cluttered market. So I'm not saying it's nirvana, and I'm not saying it's easy to get it to the right people. What I am saying though is that if you want your voice to be out there, you can do it. And I'm trying to kind of get all of us on that bandwagon and be like, we don't have to wait for a seat at the table. Like we can make our own table. I'm not waiting for CBS to give me a TV show. I started one in December. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, just get started. I feel like I'm Dame Dash now, but just get started.
I mean, let's speaking of Dame Dash, I'm literally looking at Google Keep right now, jotting some things down as I'm listening. Channeling and overcoming rejection and being shut down. It's something we all face. We're all bound to face. We don't all respond to it the same way. Some people, they go in, Kobe, 4 a.m. in the gym, lost a playoff game, back at it, right? Not trying to lose again. Other people may shut down, not want to talk to anyone, not really want to do anything. We all cope in different ways. But when we look at movements like Rockefeller, right? Specifically, not getting a label deal. All right, no label deal. We'll start one ourselves, right? What are your thoughts as it pertains to channeling and overcoming rejection and being shut down?
I think you have to realize why you're doing it. And we can circle back to the Rockefeller thing. As you mentioned, I quoted Jay-Z a few times in there. I got a chance to interview him many, many years ago. I'm a big fan of his. I've been watching his movies like forever. So we can talk about that in a minute if you want.
Cool.
But it really has to do with why you're doing it. Here's a simple example that I use. I actually don't like being on the stage. At least I didn't. And I'm a paid keynote speaker now. I've done 4 TED Talks, It's like I have a TV show, it's like, how does that work? I'm an introvert. I'd rather be, just chilling out with my kids and in my inner circle. Anyone that really knows me knows that. And so it's like, so how? Why would you do that? And one of the biggest insights I got from early mentorship when I started speaking was to say the best way to deal with stage fright is that the value of your message and the impact that you're going to make on the individuals outweighs any type of personal discomfort you have. So, you know what I mean? So if it's like I've spoken to audience where it's 1,000 people, I've spoken to audiences where it's like literally 3 people, some of my early book signings. Talk about a humbling experience. But knowing that I could say one gem, as we say, one line, one hot line that would transform one of the people in the audience out of my hour-long talk, one hot line that would change the course of their life for the better, right? If I focus on that, then I'm present. Then I can organize the butterflies in my stomach and, as they say, have them fly in formation. And I think about that every single time. I'm like, well, I better show up for this. If you think about, Dame, you talk about Jay-Z, and you talk about Biggs, the trifecta there at the time. Think about how many entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs and brown entrepreneurs, that they inspired just with their journey.
Yeah.
But if they were like, nah, but Jay-Z, and I think we have to give credit to the other 2 as well, big time. They knew they had something particular to say. But that would be probably the second part of dealing with rejection is who are you trying to talk to? Is your customer the VC who won't call you back? Is your customer the open mic person who won't let you be on the open mic? I used to go out with a comedian, so I'm familiar a little bit with that lifestyle.
Got it.
You know, it's like, you know, and the same thing with rappers, I'm sure. It's like, is that your customer? Or is your customer the people who are going to be listening to your music? Is your customer the people who are going to be using your app and making their life better because of it? Is your customer the people who are going to read your writing and get inspired by it?
Yeah.
I mean, just to be clear, like, I have my own imprint. So I did like the traditional publishing. Built From Now is my 25th book. So my first 18 or so books were with traditional publishers in New York and on the West Coast a little bit later on. And most of them were great. But at a certain point, my vision was longer than theirs. And some of them I still work with, some of them I'm cool with. I'm friends with some of those editors still. Like, it's not a diss. It's just sometimes your vision's longer than the traditional corporate speak, whatever that equivalent is. Whether it's, again, the owner of the open mic down the street who won't let you get on, or it's a major publisher over in the same zip code, which I forget right now, but it's one zip code where all the major publishers are,
Right.
you know, over in Manhattan. Like, it's the same argument, same discussion. With the books that I wanted to do, including my best-selling books, they all got rejected by publishers. I published them on my own. They became bestsellers. I'm still getting royalties from them, which is amazing. I would never have guessed that. But I knew that my community that I was building wanted it. Just like Jay-Z knew with the In My Lifetime Volume 1 single that they ended up pressing on their own. Like, he knew that. They knew. I'm sorry, I have to give them all credit. All three of them knew that. Just like I knew with the Bite Size Entrepreneur, I was like, I got an audience for this. And as I've shared in some of my keynotes, my agent and I went to a dozen publishers, and the first half dozen came back and said, we don't know if this audience exists, and we don't know, even if they existed, if you could talk to them. We don't know if they're even there, so we're not going to mess with you. And I actually asked my agent, who I've been working with for years, I said, listen, forget the rest of the publishers, take it off the market. Like, I don't want to hear their opinion. And I was like, I know it's going to cost you some money because they get paid when I get paid. And I was like, I know it's going to cost you some money, but this ain't the route. And luckily, with respect to my agent, they were like, I get it, Damon. And then I went and did my homework for about 3 months, self-published it. It was top 10 Amazon bestseller. And it's like, yeah, because my audience was cultivated. And so, I mean, from a tactical standpoint, as far as rejection, you need to talk to your audience. You don't need to talk to the people that are going to put you on, right? I'm talking directly to the bite-sized entrepreneurs, which I call non-traditional entrepreneurs now. But at the time, it was a bite-sized entrepreneur book. I was talking directly to the bite-sized entrepreneurs. So when I said, hey, this book is coming out August 5th or whatever, then they're like, cool, where can we get it? And you get it from me, go to my website or get it on Amazon. All right, cool. And they're pre-ordering it. And they pre-ordered to the point where, you know, hit that top 10 in that first week. But cultivating the audience, the people who you want to serve, let me be clear, the people you want to serve, you need to worry about their rejection, not the people that are going to put you on. Yeah. And so you need to directly connect with them as much as possible. And I mean, that we could talk a lot more about that, but that's, as you can tell, it's a big part of my philosophy as far as you owning as much as possible of the platform you're going to be on. Now, you can use a surrogate like Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, that's fine. But I got an email list at joindamon.me. They're the first ones to get the drops. They're the ones doing the pre-orders. They're the ones that are pushing the movement. I have my YouTube channel. That's about as close as I can get to having a TV network without going down to Hollywood, down the street here from Vegas. But I own that show. So I can say whatever I want to do on that show and connect with people as much as possible. I can be real on there. That will help save rejection. So it comes down to, if you're feeling the sting of rejection, make sure that you're actually getting rejected from the people who matter.
Mm. Now that's a gem right there. That's a gem right there. So yeah. I mean, you hit on it. I know you speak a lot about building community even before selling anything, which I also believe in, because that's really, for me, the genuine approach to doing anything, right?
Sure.
My intentions are not to build a community just to sell a product. My intentions are to have a community. And then if I create something that's meant to serve the community, then yes, it's going to be a product, a book, a service, whatever it is. But I have that relationship with my community that they can trust me. But more importantly, I trust myself, right? So that's how I see it as well.
I love it, because then I think you hit the nail on the head, because it really has to do with trusting yourself. I had a friend and a mentor recently say that to me, where they were like, you know what? When you did this, or when you said this or whatever, you sounded a little wobbly. Is everything okay? Like, do you believe what you're saying? They really put me on the spot.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, I believe it, but I'm not sure if the audience is there yet. And they were like, if you don't trust the audience, then you've already lost.
Mm.
And I'm like, talking about stopping me in my tracks. I was like,
yeah.
I stopped because we were on FaceTime or whatever, Zoom or whatever. I stopped. I'm like, I need to write that down. I wrote it down on an index card, put it on my desk.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, I'm not even joking. Real talk. And it's just, sometimes you need to be checked like that, which is why I love the people that are around me. Like, they'll check me. They'll be like, hey, I mean, is that what you want to do? Is that how you want to show up?
Mm-hmm.
And I care more about their rejection, you know what I mean? Or their, not even rejection, more their honesty. Because they love me. Like, they want me to show up. They want me to win. You know, if you're trying to get the attention of some, again, I'm going random on the creatives here. If you're trying to get the attention of some record exec or some VC or whatever, like, they're not thinking about you. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's just, they literally aren't thinking about you. Like, they don't know who you are. They're not invested in you in that way. But if you have your circle tight, you have people that support you. But it goes back to what you just said. You have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, how can you have a strong circle if you don't believe you're worth anything?
Yeah. I mean, you know, just to really speak deeper on that, right? Like, I have IG up right now. I was just looking back on your page, and whenever I connect with someone, you know, I always want to at least shoot them a note, right? And I've been using that now as a reference point. So when we touched base, it was back in September. So we're looking at September 2020. Now we are in June of 2021. No one on this planet could have told us that we would have been here right now and I would have been having a conversation with you, right? So we just happened to connect on Instagram, shot each other a note, great to connect, and now we're having a conversation. So this is the kind of, I would call it like synergy that I apply to whatever work I'm doing, right? Whether I'm an educator, whether I'm writing, whether I'm interviewing, is just having the faith that because we're doing the good work, because I'm doing the good work, eventually it will get to the people that it needs to get to.
I love that, Aquarius.
Yeah.
I love it. That's basically it. And it comes from having a faith in yourself. And I don't even mean a religious way, but having a faith in yourself and then having faith in the process.
Yes.
You mentioned Kobe, you know, so the idea of the process.
Yeah.
Me getting up at 3:15 a.m. to figure out how the heck to be an entrepreneur, that was my, Kobe at 4 a.m., after he lost the playoffs. He's like, okay. Yeah. Okay. This is where I need to be. And so trusting the process. And here's the funny thing, though, which I'm sure you know, where you trust the process and then other magical things start to happen. You start to see further, when I still do this process, but not quite as intensely. When I do keynotes, I don't have any notes. So I actually will memorize them. And that's just kind of like, again, probably part of the Jay-Z influence, but it's like, but that's part of my process. And again, I'm a journalist. I'm good with quotes. I'm used to memorizing things. So it's not like that muscle wasn't already built.
Yeah.
But my method was and still is the Jackson 5 method, where it's like Joe Jackson, he had a lot of issues, but rest in peace still.
Yeah.
But Joe Jackson, with his kids, they could be at the barbershop. They could be at a picnic, at a family reunion. They could be, in the kitchen. And he's like, all right, let's do ABC. And then just like that, they can do ABC.
Yeah.
That comes from the rigor. That's the energy. So for me, when I'm doing a keynote and I have like 3 or 4 standard keynotes, I will practice them out loud in full dozens of times.
Yeah.
Probably approaching 100 by this point. And just do them over and over again. So when I'm on stage, then I'm fully present. I'm not trying to remember the next line.
Yeah.
Because it's muscle memory, as they say. It's already done. I already know where things are going to land. I don't have to worry about it. I already got my jump shot. It's cool. Yeah. And then I can just relax on stage, be fully present, and then absorb the energy of the crowd, respond to people if they end up stopping me in the middle of the keynote, because I know exactly where I left off. So not even particularly about me, but more about respecting the process. And so to me, that's respecting the process. With I have some in-person speaking engagements I'm doing later on this year. It'll be my first in-persons in like 2 years. So it'll be interesting. But I'm not worried about, is the venue going to be this way? Blah, blah, blah. No, I know my process. So it's going to be cool. And then when I get there, I can be fully present with whatever shows up. And I think that's, at least for me, and I think it sounds like for you and for other folks, respecting the process and doing the work ahead of time allows you to have faith in your work and in the process.
Yep.
I'll be on the stages I'm supposed to be on. I'll get paid when I'm supposed to get paid. Like I'm not worried about that. And once you start to let go of some of that worry, it's almost like, as I explained to a coaching client recently, it's almost like you're freeing up brain space because we have so much space that's taken up with anxiety, not clinical anxiety, because I know people that deal with that. I'm not trying to make light of that, but more like anxiousness, like, okay, I'm going to connect with someone, like you said, on social media. I'm going to connect with someone on social media. All right, I want to build this relationship, so I'm going to say this thing. I'm going to say it this way. And no, I shouldn't say it this way. It's like, and there's so many people that I admire who are in my social circle now, just like you just talked about, that are my social circle now that 5-6 years ago, you could have not paid me would have been in my circle.
Yeah.
But it was just because of social media. It's because we happened to be in the coffee line at a major conference. But I trusted the process, and I didn't have to put on a persona. I didn't have to try so hard because I did the work, And I think it's the same thing with community. I'm building the communities for my books, but I have to say, I got to wrap up the campaign because I have a new book coming out. I'm like, no, my community is already waiting for the next book. So I don't have to ramp up anything,
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely, at least for me, it's extremely relieving and therapeutic. Just knowing that you are prepared for what's to come. Again, back to being an educator. I'm in my 4th year, and because I've spent the time going through the rough patches and spent the time creating toolkits that allow me to respond to the needs of students and how they might respond or react and how I can anticipate and be ahead of the game, it makes my job that much easier, creating a system, a structure. 3 words for me for 2020 into 2021 is alignment, structure, and organization. There's so many organizations that, in all honesty, are disorganized, right? And you just spoke about headspace. Like when we think of our headspace, our mental wealth and wellness and fitness, in order to have that, we have to organize our mind, organize our thoughts, organize how we operate. And that's when things really flourish and start to blossom. That's what I'm learning.
I love it. Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah.
And, to get into the book, Built From Now, I know you speak a lot about the acronym FATE, FATE, focus, agility, time, and energy, correct?
Yes, sir. You got it. So
from your experience, how do you think we can go about best managing our respective FATE?
I think the first thing is to identify what resources you have right now. And we touched on it very briefly earlier, where I find this with some of my coaching clients, and particularly for people who aren't coaching clients. So I just, I have a drink with them, or we just chop it up, or they meet me at a keynote or whatever. So just, casual people on the street, where we'll get into a conversation and it'll be, I can't do something. And of course, me being a coach, of course, it lights my ears up. I'm like, wait, what do you mean you can't do it?
Just unpack that a little bit.
Right, you're an educator. Like, it's even worse for you. Like, what do you mean, young man, you can't do it?
Yeah.
And so the conversations would often be, and I'm thinking of like 10 different conversations. But the simple version of it is that people often will look at a resource that they don't have. Let's say money or time, or the resource that I talk about in Built From Now, focus, agility, or energy, because I mentioned time. They'll like be lit up about that and say, as soon as I get that, then everything else will be easy and I get forward on my particular mission in my life.
Yeah.
But then not realize they have this wellspring of other stuff. Like, for instance, my family's from Camden, New Jersey, which is one of the roughest cities in America. And I was born in Atlantic City, but my family's from Camden. And there's folks in Camden who are dealing with like poverty. But if something needs to get done in the neighborhood, they know exactly who to talk to. And that person will do it for free. It's like, oh, okay, the cable's out. Talk to so-and-so down the street. Oh, yeah, the kids are starting trouble. Mrs. So-and-so knows these other kids, uncles. Call them over there. Oh, yeah, there was a robbery. You know what? Talk to so-and-so because he knows everybody. You need to talk to him. That's social capital. Like that's social capital. Yeah. That's influence. That's a social network before social networking. That's power. So you can be as broke as a joke and be the most powerful person in the city. And so that's a rough analogy, but that's what the argument I'm making in Built From Now is that we all have particular gifts. I'm a 4-time TED speaker. I got my master's from Northwestern, which is considered, an Ivy League school in the Midwest over in Chicago. I have best-selling books. So my social network is strong. So there's been times when I've been broke as a joke, but I've been able to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But that's because I could go and call whomever and be like, hey, I'm trying to get this done. And they'd be like, oh, I got you. I need a lawyer because I'm trying to do this startup. Well, let me get you 5 different lawyers and they'll give you a good rate. I'm like, good, because I'm broke. It's like, okay, no problem. That kind of social capital, that kind of energy. With Built From Now, it was my first book after The Bites as Entrepreneur, which came out 5 years ago, and then Bring Your Worth, which came out 2 years ago. It was my first business book where I actually could quantify my coaching. Like actually, and you can understand this, Aquarius, actually having a framework for what I was trying to teach.
Yeah.
And that framework is all of us have these 4 resources: focus, the ability to focus on something; agility, other words, being able to adapt to different circumstances quickly and effectively; time, which means literally having the time to put in effort; and energy, which means being able to, do the marathon, go the long distance, or put a big burst of quite literally energy into something. All 4 of us, we have all 4 of those resources until we die. Like, we always have them. You could be an old man, you could be a little baby. What's different, though, is that the rate of those resources changes depending on our circumstances. The example I always give is, I'm in my 40s. I got 2 little kids. They're 5 and 8. And we just went through, virtual schooling for a year and a half. They're finally getting back to school. I'm tired. So I don't have a whole lot of energy. My E is like on empty.
Yeah.
And then again, I don't have a whole lot of time because I'm a primary caregiver. And my boys are healthy and active as heck. I'm thankful for it, but man, do they wear me down. So my E and my T are super low. But focus, I am ridiculously focused. As I'm talking to you, there's nothing else in the world.
Yeah.
That's my big resource right now. And I'm fairly agile. I have a quiz, and I think you got a chance to take it over at, I think I saw a ping on there. At buildfromnowquiz.com, I have a free quiz, multiple choice. Almost 1,000 people have taken it. So that makes me so proud as far as the community coming through. And that's giving me more insight into what resources we tend to have in the communities that I'm trying to work with. And then ideally it's giving you and other folks who have taken the quiz more insight into what their biggest resource is. And the quiz is takes 2 minutes, multiple choice, as you saw. And it's really simple. And I designed that again, because I have a framework now. And what I'm trying to show people, even though I think the quiz is simple and it's nothing like a Myers-Briggs. It's not that deep. I'm not a clinical, test creator. I don't even know the term for it, but it's not on that level. But it's enough for people to get that insight to say, wait, I've been trying to do all-nighters, which would be an energy thing, as I talk about in the book. But maybe I should just be getting up a little bit earlier and working deeply for an hour, which is like a focus thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sometimes you end up having the wrong tool, not that you're deficient. And it's been frustrating to me. And that's one of the reasons why I got into coaching and been writing so much. It's frustrating to me to connect with particularly people in the BIPOC or in the LGBTQ community who know they have something to say, who know how they want to impact the world, but then believe they need one particular resource to do it. And then they're not going to make a move because they're waiting on someone else to give them that resource.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I said, hey, I just became a stay-at-home dad. I got a 3-month-old. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm not going to go into startup. I'm not going to go into entrepreneurship. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to try to figure this part out. Like my career, as we've talked about it, even me having this conversation with you, none of that would exist. So it had to be built from now. It had to be built based on the resources that I had. And I made the best of the resources that I had. And I'm pretty pleased with the impact I was able to make and with the people that have given me good feedback on the stuff I put out. And so I'm trying to give that gift to other people. And so that's really a focus of Build From Now. But as you read, if you don't respect the foundation and the value of the resources that you have, if you don't value that, again, you're broke in Camden, but you know exactly how the neighborhood runs and anything that needs to get done, you can get it done. So you don't need money. If you don't value or recognize that power, then all we're talking about right now is a moot conversation. So that's what I'm really trying to do with Build From Now is say, hey, recognize your power. All of us got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's as you're saying what you're saying, I think of the word narrative, right? Where we can be provided a narrative. Yeah, I'm from Staten Island, born in the projects, from New Brighton. That's my narrative. I could have let that narrative direct me, but number one, my parents would never allow that to happen, right? Because they took us from the projects to moving up the street, owning the first house of theirs, and then making the move to New Jersey. So I always witnessed the evolution. But like when we look at narrative and how narrative can inspire us to create a new one, or influence us to stay within the one that we feel we've been birthed, really makes a difference. I have to explore more when it comes to that, because I'm just thinking of it like that. But from listening to what you were saying, that's what came to mind.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I appreciate your vulnerability with that. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And that's kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where that's why the circle that you keep, it's not always going to be the same circle.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There are people that are in my circle right now that I would never have thought would have been in my circle 5 years ago. And I'm sure 5 years before that, I had a different circle. And it doesn't mean you have to cut people off per se or anything. It's more like, if you want to get deep for a second, as your vibration, as how you put things out there, how you show up, which I love that term. I use that term probably every day. How you show up. How you show up ends up reflecting in your environment anyway. And there are people, even full-on communities, that don't mess with me anymore. But they knew I was going to a different place.
Yeah.
And I know you're on the creative side. I know that you do your teaching as well. And you understand when you elevate your teaching, when you come out with a new thing, as I like to share, the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, like I said, was Amazon bestseller. And then Bring Your Worth came out, which was kind of a left turn. That's where I got a lot deeper as far as talking about our foundation, our heritage. And it was not a bestseller. It was not. It just wasn't. And luckily my intention wasn't to have another bestseller. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to have another one, but that wasn't my intention. But then I had literally people this year contact me out of the blue and say, "Hey, I picked up Bring Your Worth and I hung on every single word." I was like, "What?" Like, it came out 2.5 years ago. Are you serious? I'm like, yes, I get it now. And so there are other people, though, that were along the ride for the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. Obviously it was a bestseller, so there's a lot of people that were riding with it. And the Bring Your Worth wasn't for them. It's like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that, that saw Bill from Now and they're like, nah, that's not where I want to go. And so I don't think it's necessarily about having to excommunicate people out of your life. Sometimes in extreme cases you have to, but more like you said, I think, to use your term, which I love that term, if you understand the narrative you're telling yourself, that you can change that narrative. And as you change that narrative, the people around you will start to change.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Process. It's just, that's process. That's trust in the process. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm not going to mess with these people anymore." It's like, no, like, I'm in a different place. It doesn't have to be aggressive. You know what I'm saying?
Not at all. I mean, it doesn't have to be aggressive at all, because even with that, I've noticed how some people might come back around, right?
Yes.
Where it's like someone we've known from childhood, we went to elementary school with, now we're seeing them at this particular event, and it's almost like magical in a way. And it also speaks to, I know you mentioned Penny Pierce in your book, and she has a book called Frequency, which I also have. Yes. And you mentioned it, talking about energy, vibrations, frequency. My mother is very into meta quantum physics, and she's very esoteric in her approach. And this is something that I believe in, and I've not only believe in, I've witnessed. That's literally been my life to date. Even when I disclose, how we met, and just letting things sink in, and here we are today. So the reason why I do what I do is to show people that it's possible. Like, this is possible, right? And that's what I enjoy the most.
I love it. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Aquarius. It was funny. I'm doing research on my next project, and it's funny you said that. I pulled out. I'm not the biggest Deepak Chopra fan because some of his stuff I'm not on, but it was one big book of his that I love. It's The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire, I think is the name of it. I always screw up the name of it, but I think that's the name of it. And it's one of his first books from probably, I probably got like 15 years ago. It was recommended. And there was a quote in there that I was thinking about, and that's why I pulled it out. Again, I'm back to the quotes. So I pulled out the book. I hadn't pulled it out in like 3-4 years. And I was going to look it up tonight as I was writing. And it reminds me of what you were talking about. Again, back to the Penny Pierce and all that. He talks about cigarette smoke. And he's like, our spirit, our energy is like cigarette smoke, where you could be not in Manhattan or any place crowded like that, but you could be walking down the street and you can smell cigarettes. Yeah. Especially if you're not a smoker. I'm not a smoker. So you smell cigarettes. And then you go maybe like another, 100 feet or whatever, and you notice that someone's smoking.
Yeah.
The same thing with our energy, where if you can pick up on cigarette smoke and it's like 100 feet away or whatever, before you even see it, like you're not even conscious of it until that hits your nose, and you get that little tinge in your nostrils and all that. And you're like, wait, what's up? Somebody's smoking something, and it's like, oh yeah, it's that person over there. But before all other senses kick in, you know on some level. And I feel like that's the same thing with, not to be too highfalutin about it, but with like kindred spirits or with community or with people that you're meant to connect with. And I don't care if it's social media or if it's in person. I think that just like you talked about with Instagram, like I think it all has the same power. Yeah. Like we understand things on a deeper level than we give ourselves credit for. And when we trust that process, when we do the work, then it allows our unconscious, our subconscious, whatever terms you want to use, to do that work too. Because we're not wrapped up in that anxiety.
Yeah.
Again, like, when you and I connected on Instagram, I wasn't worried about, because I was working on my book at the time. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I wonder if he'll big up my book when it comes out in January. It wasn't even that. It was like, oh, he seems cool. Okay, let me see what's going on and follow your content, sharing this. So I'm like, all right, I like what he's doing. I respect it, and I'm sure it was the same for me.
Absolutely, likewise.
But you have to relax to do that. And again, back to the cigarette smoke, you on some level know when you're in your community, when you're in your vibe, when you're in that conversation where you both are elevating or all of you are elevating each other. And I think on some level, you know when you're not.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of being quiet enough, again, doing the work and then trusting the rest, being quiet enough for the process to be like, okay, this isn't my vibe anymore. And there's organizations that I quit. There's people I spent less time with. And it was just a natural progression, and trusting that you're being led wherever you're supposed to go. But that comes, like you said, I'm so glad you said that. It comes from trusting yourself. None of this stuff works if you don't trust yourself. And that's what I'm trying to get across the bill for now, where it's like, especially, us that are, BIPOC or folks in the LGBTQ community, like, there's been so much distrust piled on us from so-called mainstream. And it's like, but we have the riches, we have the insight, we have the strength, as I talk about in the book. It's like we're getting gaslit now. It's like, no, you got the power. It's like, why do you think people don't want you to speak up? Why do you think you're being repressed? Just for fun? It's like, no, because you have the power.
Yeah.
You have something to say. You have the power of numbers. You have the power of social capital. You're talking about social media. I mean, you already know this. I would feel like you're already a student of this, but, Twitter, Black Planet, MySpace, Instagram, Clubhouse, like as a good friend of mine says, we got the sauce. It's like we make it hot. We make it hot. And I mean that for probably with BIPOCs across the board, but particularly my Black and brown brothers and sisters, like we make it hot. And so understanding our value and our worth, and then bringing that, if we want to, we can bring it to someone else's table, or we can create our own table. And we have enough power right now, leveraged probably mostly by technology, but by other things. Yeah. We have enough power right now. We have enough resources, which I guess gets back to the point of the book. We have enough resources to make our own stuff now. I own my own publishing imprint. When you buy Built From Now, I'm literally the manager, to quote the meme. You know what I mean? Like you buy it from me, it goes into my business bank account, and then I send you the book. Like, and then I get the majority of it, and it's reinvested in my company. Like, we have the opportunity to do that. And it's not like I'm a multimillionaire. It's like you can do that too in that particular field. But first you have to cultivate the community. But then the only way you're going to cultivate the community is knowing your own worth. And that's what I'm trying to do with a series of books, is really help people understand that foundational thing. And I had understood that I had foundational growth to go through when I became an entrepreneur a handful of years ago. And so trying to help other people recognize that they have to go back to go forward. Just like you're talking about Staten Island. Yeah. Just like I'm talking about Atlantic City and Camden. Like, it's like if you had shame around where you were from, you'd be capping yourself. Yeah. That's the energy I'm trying to bring out there. You know what I mean? It's like, no, like we have to be proud of where we're from, who we are. Scars and all.
Absolutely. I mean, the scars literally make us who we are today. So how can we leave those out? It wouldn't be just, in all honesty, for us to do that. So, I mean, we can talk for hours, I'm sure. And this was definitely an elevating conversation. In regards to some of the resources that you can leave for our community to tap into, of course, you have your book that's out now, Built From Now, your website, your socials. How can people best stay in touch with what you have going on, as well as future projects?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was an elevating conversation for me too. And I appreciate, as an interviewer, you taking it to the next level. So I always appreciate it. I'm an interviewer too, so always
it means a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, from a journalist, that means a ton. So I appreciate everything that you do. And as you mentioned before, I'm just a student of the game who just loves to learn and ask questions, to be honest with you, since I was younger. So that definitely means a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. So the best resource, if you want to learn more about me, is damonbrown.net. That's the hub. I have my own YouTube channel, and I have my own publishing imprint. So that's kind of the hub for everything. You can access everything from there. You can buy the books on there too. Also have, which is a nice thing about having the equivalent of owning your masters or owning your intellectual property, which we might have to have another conversation about. But I have T-shirts and mugs and other things that are based on the books that I've done, and all of them are actually done or designed by women or people of color. So it's like, so I'm trying to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Yeah. And so come through, support that way, which I would love. And so with other folks that are getting a piece of it. If you want to learn more about Built From Now, you can take the free Built From Now quiz at builtfromnowquiz.com. Again, it's 2 minutes, multiple choice, it's completely free. You get more insight as far as what your main resource is. Again, the fates, focus, agility, time, and energy. I go a lot deeper into that with Built From Now. Built From Now came out on January 28th. It's available on literally all the platforms. So audiobook, your favorite bookstore, you can buy directly from me and get a signed copy straight from me. So feel free to do that at DamonBrown.net. And actually having a deluxe edition of the book coming out on July 28th. 2021, depending on when you listen to this. So that'll be available soon. So you can pre-order that through Amazon and then through the other platforms shortly. And the last thing would be I have your Bring Your Worth YouTube channel. And that's at youtube.com/BrownDamon. All of it is free every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11:30 a.m. Vegas time, so Pacific Standard Time. I'm live every Wednesday at this point, and then it's recorded episodes, super short, 5 to 10 minutes every Monday and Friday. And it's about what, your brilliant interview talked about. So it's about bringing your worth. It's about understanding your value. It's about finding time when you feel like you don't have time. It's about creating the resources when you don't have the money. It's about making an impact on the world based on where you're at right now. And that's probably my parting message, is that if you look at the names of the books, it's The Bite as Entrepreneur, it's Bring Your Worth, Level Up Your Creative Power, Value, and Service to the World. It's the new one, Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. What I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to say to all y'all is that you can make an impact right now. That's it. There's no but, there's no, when you, there's no, and you have to get blah, blah, blah. My message isn't that you have to fix yourself. You're not broken.
Yeah.
You need to make an impact now. So it's not even like you can make an impact now. It's like we need you right now. So whatever corner of the world you're in, do it.
That's a lovely way to bring things to a close. Actually, two more questions for you. So the first question is, in regard to the deluxe coming out in July, can we pre-order that on your website today?
Yes, I'm actually going to be having it available for pre-order by the end of the week.
All right.
And so, so we're speaking in middle of June. It's going to be up there in a matter of like 24 hours. Luckily, at least that's the nice thing about running your own business. You're like, yeah. So the website's getting updated as we speak. I just sent it to press last night. So that your timing is exquisite. That's why I'm like, it'll be updated tonight, because I literally just sent it to the printer last night.
Got it.
Yeah, so real talk. So it will be available, signed copy, at DamonBrown.net. And it's currently available for pre-order on Kindle as well, and they'll be available on other platforms by July 28th. So that's, but you can start with DamonBrown.net for sure. And if you want the original version as well as my other books, that's available right now too.
Cool. And the last question, always the last question on the Black to Business podcast, is if I was a business owner wanting to work with you, how would you say you would be able to help me?
I would help you understand the resources and the value you already got. One of the challenges with the space that I work in, and I'm in the same space as like Gary Vaynerchuk or Tim Ferriss, or what have you. We're competitors. We're in the same space. And one of the challenges I find with business books and with business coaches, because I do one-on-one coaching, you can learn about that at DamonBrown.net, is that we often have the thing of, you have to take on this business model and stop doing this other stuff. And my energy is a little bit different. I'm working from where you are right now. And the hundreds of coaching clients that I've had, from people who are relatively well off to people in the inner city who are trying to find a way out of the situation that they're in, we're always building from now. We're always creating with what we've got. And I think that's something that makes it a little bit different than the conversation that you might have with other folks in the business space. I'm not interested in you building this new program or having to invest in this thing or that thing. It's like, well, what are you working with right now?
Yeah.
Let's maximize what you got. I'd say the second part of that, and I say this to all my coaching clients, is that I'm not interested in adding. I'm interested in subtracting. And so I think that, especially if you're talking to me, you already have a vision or have an idea that there's something more that you're supposed to be doing. You just feel a block towards that.
Yeah.
So my main thing is to have a conversation with you, give you a few frameworks, including the buildfromnowquiz.com, which might be a good place to start. Get in that framework and to say, okay, well, let's remove those blocks. Again, believing that people can smell that cigarette smoke. They know what the deal is. They know there's something that's capping them.
Yeah.
We're going to work together and identify and try to remove it. Because I think we all can be great. And not everybody has that philosophy. It sounds trite, but when I say it, but I've worked with coaches. I've worked with a lot of folks. Not everyone believes that everyone can be great. That's not necessarily a common belief.
Yeah.
That's why I try to say it, where it's like, no, for real.
Yeah.
There's a greatness within you. There's a certain role that you're supposed to play. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And so if you're working with me, and that could come through the one-on-one coaching. Again, at DamonBrown.net, you can learn more. Come through the books. It could come through the YouTube channel and youtube.com/BrownDamon. A lot of these joints are free.
Yeah.
Helping you recognize that greatness within. All of us recognize that. And you might hear them in the background, but I have my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old. They came out of the womb believing they were great.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for both of them coming out. I caught one of them. For real, been there the whole time. And I'm like, oh, they came out believing they were great. But not because my wife and I, have that DNA. It's because all kids do.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, and this as a teacher, I'm preaching to the choir here. You can tell me stories. That light's still in there somewhere, but someone told them to dim it.
Yeah. It gets so dimmed down. We have to go searching. The older we become, the more we have to search, which speaks exactly to what you just said, because what you said reminds me or really causes me to think about, all right, you're looking to optimize in a way. And then within that also validate, this is right. Let's go deeper. This is right. Let's optimize. So, those are two words that I thought of as you are explaining what it is you do. I appreciate that. And Damon, it's been an amazing interview. I'm so excited that we were able to have you on the Black to Business podcast, and I'm looking forward to future conversations.
Me too. Thank you, Aquarius. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So take it easy. Again, thanks for joining us, and have a blessed one.
We truly hope that you enjoyed that conversation between two powerful Black men. Be sure to check out our website for complete show notes and resources mentioned during this episode. I also want to share that we've partnered with The Creative Brother to curate our 2021 list of Black men inspiring in business and in their communities. Visit blacktobusiness.com/Black Men Who Lead to view our list of 30 Black men changing the face of entrepreneurship. Let us know if you're enjoying this series by rating the show on Apple Podcasts. Until next time.